welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-eun in Seoul. We have a lot on our plate today, so let's get started with a look at the day's highlights. For the first time in over a decade, the number of jobless Koreans surpassed 1 million last year, while the youth unemployment rate reached a new high. It's been almost 1 year since Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho and his economic team have been at the helm of the Korean economy, and we take a look back on changes so far. The number of unemployed here in Korea surpassed the 1 million mark last year. It's the first time to cross this threshold in more than 15 years since related figures were tallied. Our Shin Se-min has the details.
Another bleak jobs report for Korea. The number of jobless Koreans pierced through the 1 million mark last year, reaching 1,012,000, up 36,000 from the year before. It's the first time figures have surpassed that mark since new records were compiled at the turn of the century under new standards. Statistics Korea says the unemployment rate stood at 3.7% last year, up 0.1 percentage point on year. The youth unemployment rate for those aged 15 to 29 stood at a fresh record of 9.8%, up from 9.2% the year before.
There are two potential reasons for the rising jobless figures, especially for young Koreans. First, the manufacturing sector is slowing due to the government-led corporate restructuring process. Second, more people are actively seeking work in the hope of becoming economically active.
Even gains in employment are shrinking, with Korea adding fewer than 300,000 jobs last year, the first drop under that level since the global financial crisis. And such trends of a slowing job market are likely to stay, with some even projecting the annual employment figure and much more will worsen this year.
The decline in the manufacturing sector is likely to push down employment figures this year to the mid-200,000 range, and the quality of jobs will also decline as the manufacturing sector has been known to provide regular quality work.
Expert adds that considering the changing demographics of the country, a collective effort to secure jobs both in terms of quantity and quality for all age groups is necessary, as the economically active population will continue to shrink in the future. This is why the government has made job creation its top priority for the new year, with plans to add more than 60,000 new jobs in the public sector for young workers. Shin Se-min, Business Daily.
Korea's export prices in December rose to their highest level in 2 years on the back of a weaker local currency and robust overseas demand for electronics products. Data from the Bank of Korea shows the preliminary export price index in December was 86.1, the highest since December of 2014. It's also a near 3% rise on month. The price jump was mainly due to an increase in the price of manufacturing products, including electronics, coal, and oil products, which rose nearly 3% from the previous month. The won also weakened by almost 2%, pushing up prices. Korea's national tax revenue climbed sharply in the first 11 months of last year, despite the protracted economic slowdown in the country. According to the Ministry of Strategy and Finance, roughly $193 billion were collected through November, up about 12% or $20 billion more than a year earlier. The total uptick was led by a surge in income, corporate, and value-added taxes, which all rose over $5.8 billion. As a result, the government's budget balance posted a surplus of about $17 billion as of November. The World Bank expects the global economy to post a moderate growth of 2.7% this year. That's a slight downward revision from the bank's previous forecast in June of 2.8%, but it's markedly better than last year's 2.3% growth, one of the worst performances since the 2008 global financial crisis. The World Bank attributes its better outlook for the year to the recovery of oil and commodity prices, but it cites uncertainties on future economic policies, which concerns over unpredictability of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, as well as Britain's plans to leave the European Union. The World Bank says developed economies will do better than last year, posting 1.8% growth. The forecast for the U.S. is 2.2% and China's at 6.5%. China appears to be upping its economic retaliation against Korea in the wake of Seoul's announcement that it will deploy the THAAD missile defense system. This time, it looks like Beijing might be making imports more difficult for some Korean cosmetics products. Our Lee Joo-young tells us more.
China has refused to approve shipments of massive amounts of Korean cosmetics into the country. According to industry sources in Beijing on Tuesday, 19 out of the 28 beauty products that failed to receive import approval from China were from Korea, and more than 11,000 kilograms of Korean cosmetics were ordered to be returned. The rejected items include lotions, toothpaste, masks, and other popular Korean cosmetics products in China. Korean cosmetic companies, including Amora Pacific and Colmore Korea, have seen their share prices plunge since July last year when Seoul formally announced its plans to deploy the U.S.-developed THAAD missile defense system. However, Korea's Ministry of Health and Welfare says the refusal to import the products was down to problems with the products themselves rather than the THAAD issue. In other sectors, though, Beijing has virtually banned popular Korean entertainers from performing in China and rejected Korean Airlines' plan to operate chartered flights to China ahead of the Chinese New Year holiday season that starts at the end of this month. Lately, reports also say China test-fired some 100 medium-range ballistic missiles last year, and the Korean military confirmed that several Chinese military planes entered Korea's air defense identification zone earlier this week. These moves from China are believed to be a sign of economic retaliation against the deployment of THAAD, which Beijing claims could hurt its economic security interests. Seoul and Washington say the defense system is aimed at countering threats from North Korea. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
Hyundai Motor and sister company Kia Motors saw their sales in France rise to near record levels last year on the back of strong SUV sales. According to the France office of Cotra, the two automakers sold a combined 61,700 vehicles there last year, up 16.2% from the previous year. The figure is just 24 units short of the record set back in 2012. The sharp rise was attributed partly to strong sales of the Hyundai Tucson compact SUV, which more than doubled over the period, and steady sales of the Kia Sportage SUV. The on-year growth of the Korean car makers also far exceeds the 5% expansion in France's overall market. The U.S. dollar has been showing great strength in recent weeks, surging ahead of America's transition in leadership. And as the Korean won is looking to remain on a weakening streak this year, financial products based on the greenback are gaining traction. Our Eunice Kim tells us more.
Since crossing over in December, the Korean won has been flirting with the 1,200 mark all week, surging past it at one point on Monday. And as some investors say they could see the Korean currency entering the 1,300 won territory, interest is growing in U.S. dollar-based financial products. In the spotlight for their relative stability are the dollar-based savings account and the dollar-based repurchase agreement, better known as repos. The idea behind a dollar-based savings account is to buy and put away the U.S. currency when it's cheaper and sell it when the rate climbs high. The saver is protected up to 50 million won, which is about $42,000, with taxes exempted on the gains. The same concept applies for dollar-based repos, while the interest gained here is a little bit higher. Thanks to the strong dollar rally, interest has been on the up and up for such products, with cash going into them more than doubling over the past year. These tallies also include medium-risk investments like exchange-traded funds and equity-linked securities. Such investments are particularly attractive for those who are planning a move abroad, whether temporarily to study or for a more longer-term stay. Products that are kept for more than 10 years can enjoy a 15.4% tax savings on forex and interest gains.
Don't forget, there is still a risk of loss here. It's necessary to consider the risks of exchange rate fluctuations when investing in U.S. assets.
Experts say it is prudent to not invest more than 20% of one's cash holdings into forex trade, For those considering entry, doing so when the rate is back at the 1100 level will help in making a profit after the exchange fees. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
This Friday will mark 1 year since the Park Geun-hye administration's third economic team, led by Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho, has taken the reins. With so many uncertainties lingering, it's been a difficult time for the top economic policymaker. But today, we look back on what achievements have been made and what challenges lie ahead. To tell us more about this, our Kim Min-ji joins us in the studio. Hi, Min-ji.
Hi, Ji-yoon.
All right, so it's been one problem after another last year.
Yes, you're right. It's been a turbulent year for Minister Yoo's economic team. The government started off with an ambitious plan to achieve growth in the 3% range. But a year in, the Korean government revised down its growth outlook for 2017 to 2.6%, potentially putting the country's growth in the 2% range for the third straight year. Now, it's the first time the government's outlook has fallen below the 3% mark since the height of the global financial crisis in 2009.
So we can say the economic environment wasn't the most favorable for Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho. And of course, he did face some criticisms for lacking clear policy agendas. So what were some of the other major difficulties?
So if you remember, when he took office back in January 2016, financial markets across the world were in turmoil after the Chinese stock market crashed. You'll remember early that month, North Korea also conducted a nuclear test, which eventually led to the shutdown of the entered Korean industrial complex in Kaesong. Also, low global oil prices took a toll on the country's exports, once the main pillar of the economy. The government then began its corporate restructuring push, which was followed by the Brexit vote and Donald Trump's unexpected win in the U.S. presidential election. So conditions weren't the most favorable, and it made things extremely difficult for Minister Yoo to aggressively push for the pledges he had made.
When his term started, he decided to carry out major reforms in the four key sectors of labor, education, finance, and the public sector. But he wasn't able to make any major achievements, mainly because economic conditions were off course. On top of that, he hasn't really been able to convey his policies and vision to the private sector and general public. The fact that the opposition bloc holds a parliamentary majority has made it even more difficult to push for strong policies.
Experts also say the government's corporate restructuring drive led to massive damages due to Hanjin Shipping, the world's 7th largest shipping company, falling into court receivership, as well as causing massive layoffs in the manufacturing sector. And not even a year in, there were prospects for a new finance minister amid a huge cabinet reshuffle in the wake of an ongoing political scandal, although Yoo was eventually able to retain his position.
All right, so the Korean economy has been facing a lot of uncertainty, including the ongoing political turmoil right now. But how about in terms of achievements?
Well, a lot of the factors we talked about were unexpected and hard to prevent. So in terms of what he did well, what most experts and analysts seem to agree on is the implementation of the supplementary budget last year. Now, thanks to increased tax revenue, there was enough fiscal room to take on an extra budget. And although it wasn't a major lift, it was enough to prevent a hard landing. And in addition to that, late last year, the ministry also unveiled measures to stabilize the property market amid record high household debt.
And along with all that, Korea's presidential election is coming up this year, and we don't know what might happen to that. So what are some of the challenges that remain, and what should Minister Yoo and his team focus on going forward?
So after acting President Hwang Kyo-won stepped in and the finance minister was able to retain his position, he has been stepping up monitoring efforts in the private sector and is working to foster relationships with the incoming Trump administration. Now, although the policy direction for this year is aimed at using expansionary measures to more effectively tackle the uncertainties and bolster people's livelihoods, experts seem to agree that much focus should be put on risk management.
The policy direction for this year is good in principle, but given the current conditions, that's understandable to a certain extent. Because economic policies are also politically influenced, the economic team needs to be able to manage the risks ahead and prevent any other big problems from arising. Once things settle down, it should alter its current policies so they're better adjusted for the economy.
The year 2017 is also packed with uncertainties, including the ongoing corporate restructuring, the potential for more rate hikes in the U.S., and political changes in Europe. And with an early presidential election expected in Korea, experts say it's not a time to start something new and that the government's role should be to steer the economy through all the uncertainties.
So it seems that times will continue to be tough for the economic team for the time being. But thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.